Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be interviewing my former ballet instructor who is also the faculty of University of Akron, Joffrey Ballet School, and executive director and founder of ArtSparks, and her name is Kara Sia. Hi Kara, thank you for being here today.
Hi,
And
Veronica.
I want to talk to you about some things with your background in dance, what you witnessed with cross training and safety in the ballet world because you were
Mhm.
a professional dancer for so long and obviously have fantastic credentials. And you were somebody who really sparked a change in me that really led me into the path that I am today. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience as a professional dancer and how it shaped your teaching philosophy today?
Sure, sure. Well, my professional career started at 14 when I ended up in the Ohio Ballet, first as an apprentice. And really, my background is strictly classical ballet. So, I come from that long line of real conservatory ballet training, and majority of my professional career was spent in ballet companies. Although I did do a number of operas as a dancer in opera companies once my ballet career really was winding down due to injury. And my career was plagued with injury. So I just feel like it's amazing what you're doing to stave off those kinds of injuries.
Can you tell us a little bit more about like what kind of injuries you sustained and if you feel like there was any connection to the technique or type of training that you received or what was promoted back then?
Yes. So I was born with a condition called dysplasia, which is a hip condition that actually helped me quite a bit when I was performing because, the ball of my hip uh, didn't fit correctly into the joint, which made me hyper flexible and hyper mobile, which of course is great. When you're a dancer, you want to be able to take your leg and throw it over your head and hold it there. And I could do that. Um, but it also led to a wear and tear that was incredibly progressive, because it would just continue to bang against that hip socket, and so I sustained many little minor tears, eventually having bone spurs, and finally a full crack that happened when I hit the floor in a rehearsal, and that was my career ending injury. But the majority of my injuries were hip related. I did suffer from some shin splints, also when I was really young. I seem to outgrow them for some reason, but I was plagued with shin splints, and of course the typical dancer foot issues.
Yep, yep. Fun fact, I actually after having kids found out that I have hip dysplasia too in both hips. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you remember this, but I used to complain about my right hip all the time in
Oh yeah.
class and
Hmm.
um I don't know why, but everybody kept telling me I had hip impingement, but it wasn't
Mm.
correct. And then I actually ended up going to some other specialists who found out I had bilateral hip dysplasia. And
Hmm.
so I've taken good care of it now. And it's funny because I actually have more functional mobility, like you just mentioned, where you were able to
Hmm.
like hold it up and do a lot of stuff.
Right.
I have way more functional mobility without pain now with what I do than what I did back when I didn't know what was happening with my body and when I was
Hmm.
dancing professionally. Because
Wow.
I would
Yeah.
dislocate my hip all the time, and I was like, "Why do I feel like I feel really weird? Like, I have a loose tooth that's hanging by a thread, but it's my hip."
Mm. Hmm. Yes.
And then I'd
Right.
have to get reset and put back in. So, like, yeah, that's crazy, and, I don't think you mentioned this, but I know this. You have bilateral hip replacements now, correct?
I do. I do.
So
Absolutely.
from and did you what preventative measures were taken by teachers, if any, or were you just held to the same expectations with having hip dysplasia? Do you think that there could have been things that you could have done differently, I guess?
Oh, I'm quite sure there could have been things I should have done differently. I did not have teachers, and I think this is pretty common of people who came up in my era in the dance world. I did not have teachers who were focused on health and wellness of dancers. It was very much a culture of go, go, go. And if you can't go, 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 you're done. It was like
Yep.
all or nothing, right? So there wasn't a whole lot of mentorship there at all when it came to your body. And in fact, I would say I distinctly remembering just kind of putting up with the pain and not telling my teachers for fear that then I would be, relegated to the back row and or worse, out the door. So it's so nice to see now this focus on health and wellness within the dance world.
Yeah.
It's truly one of the
Yeah.
best evolutions I can imagine for dancers who are coming up.
It's really funny you said that, and I think a lot of dancers feel the same way about the fear of vocalizing their pain because I mean, I would have to say that overall, classes at Akron, there were teachers that you would just absolutely not say anything about your pain to. But even with that, like, I knew that I could talk to you. We had a great relationship, still do.
Right.
But I still didn't vocalize my pain because of what other people had kind of put in my head. And it's
Sure.
like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't talk about this. Maybe I'm just a baby. Um, and
Hmm.
it can be really frustrating because I think a lot of dancers have felt the same way and they get scared because I mean, with Akron, I was afraid I would fail a class. Like somebody would just,
Hmm.
straight up flunk
Sure.
me and I'd have to leave the dance program.
Hmm.
Um, so there's so much fear still behind expressing that you're in pain. And I think the thing that I really like, I try to get across to my programs is if you are in pain, that's your body's way of telling you you have to modify something. So
Hmm.
for me, for example, with my right hip being always aggravated, and then all of a sudden after I had babies, my left hip started to go too. And I was like, what's happening? But then I started to really break down my movement and watching myself on video doing all the things I do, I started to
Hmm.
see, "Ooh, what am I doing here? That's not right. That's what's causing the pain. That's
Hmm.
why my hip's hurting. That's not what I should be doing." And so when your body is hurting, it's not you need to stop completely, it's you have to modify. And that's why I started my instructor certification program and I've started to do that because I want to teach instructors how to identify these things in students. And if their student comes to them and they're like, "Hey, I'm really having pain with Alice Agone, Dave LePay right now. What can I do to fix that?" That they're not gonna be like, "Oh, you just have to turn out more and flatten yourself to the side." No, let's actually stop for a second and examine that dancer's hip and make
Right.
sure that you're, actually holding your true second, and then also that their muscles surrounding the hips, the core, and that everything on the standing side is also engaged properly and balanced. And I think that we need to look at pain as a let's solve a problem versus okay, you are a problem.
Hmm. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, because it is so hard. It's so
It
hard.
is. It is.
Okay.
Right.
So I know for myself, when I was growing up and I was dancing, I never saw exercise into the dance classroom until I started taking class with you. And we would have conditioning days. And I always thought, well, at first I thought this is weird. then and then I like started to realize, oh my goodness, I'm the strongest I've ever felt in this class. And that's part of the reason why I stayed in your class by choice. Was that I liked how strong I felt after doing your class. There was a sense of mastery with that. So, my question for you is what led you to kind of having that aha moment where you're like, you know what, I'm going to start incorporating some exercise and conditioning into my classes?
Hmm. Well, I would say, first of all, personal experience and what I did go through with my hips led me to understand the true value of physical therapy and occupational therapy because you don't recover from a double hip replacement without serious dedication to, you know, working those exercises and continuing to stretch and strengthen, but also observations of students. I think when I first started to incorporate that in the classroom was when I was looking at classrooms as a whole and realizing that there were gaps, especially like in core strength, as you mentioned. And then obviously in point class, I'd have people that were coming into a, beginning point class who sometimes had 3 or 4 years of point at their home studio, but there was, not that strength that they needed in the ankles and the metatarsals to really manipulate the shoes and to feel yes, and to be to feel steady on point. And so I think that introducing those kind of exercises into a class, it was important because of exactly what you said. Because I think once students start to really work through those exercises on a regular basis, they do feel stronger, as you said you did, and that leads them, something clicks, and then there's that, you can tell a student all the time, you need to go to the gym and you need to work, your abductors and your adductors, like you have to do both. You can't just work one set of muscles. Everything has an opposition. And they would kind of look at me like, yeah, all right, whatever, like I'm never going to the gym. But once
Right.
they see it in practice, right, and they feel the strength that comes from it, the light bulb goes off. So that's sort of how that all started.
Well, that I think that you and I actually went to the gym together, and that was probably one of the first times that I was going to the gym because I never
Mm-hmm.
really I was like, "Ooh, the gym," because my mom was a personal trainer, and so I was
Right.
always like, "Ooh, no, I don't wanna be bulky like her," because she, like, power lifted, so I
Yes.
was always scared of getting bulky, but then I was like, "Oh, hold on. You go to the gym, and you're a ballet dancer." Like,
Mm-hmm.
"Whoa, okay, so I
Mm-hmm.
should be here?" And that's another thing you just said too was, they'll go in and, maybe do just one muscle group. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's I watch people in the gym just because I do. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll see people go to the same 3 machines, and they're working, like, only the front half of their body or
Right.
only the sides of their body, and they don't work the opposing muscle group.
Right.
And that's where having like my programs is really important because I'm telling you exactly which muscles you're going to work. I'm telling you this is what we're going to work. This is what's going to help it. There's different types of muscle contractions. It's not
Mhm.
just all about like one speed doing, a concentric contraction. You've
Right.
got to do multiple speeds for ballet. You're on stage, you're doing an adagio 1 second, then you're going into a waltz, and now you're in grande allegro. Those are all different muscle fibers, and it's
Right.
a compound activation. It's
Mhm.
not just, I've seen people sit on the knee extension machine, for example,
Mm.
and just do like knee
Mhm.
extensions. It's like that's not really a great exercise for a dancer though. We have to
Right.
do something that's more functional and appropriate for what we're trying to get out of our
Right.
movement.
Right.
Um so yeah, really great points. And that's so great. I'm really lucky that I had you because I mean honestly, I don't think I had any cross training. I definitely didn't have it when I performed professionally. We did not do
Mhm.
any.
Right.
It was just all shows and rehearsals. That was it. So, when you actually started integrating exercise into the dance classrooms, how did you see any negative reactions from students on actually putting this material into your classrooms? And did you see negative reactions from teachers? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I would say I did not see it from teachers, but I definitely did see it with students. I think there was a general lack of willingness to trust that, you know, core work really had an effect on dance work, or that, the strength training that I incorporated. uh, there was a learning curve, I think, for most students to figure out how one related to the next. And again, once they really devoted themselves to it, obviously, they were able to see that, and feel it kinesthetically. But yeah, sure, there's resistance there. And also, I think it's daunting for people to think about undertaking another form of training when you're so
Mhm.
ensconced in a ballet training or a jazz training or whatever genre it might be that you're performing in. To think about having to add something to that already grueling schedule feels overwhelming to some people. Um, what I did by taking class time for it, I think, ended up proving point to many that you can do both, and it doesn't have to be time consuming. You know,
Yeah.
it really
And I
doesn't.
think I think the biggest pushback from a lot of teachers that I have gotten, teachers that have approached me online and said, hey, this is just unrealistic. You can't take class time away from technique time, or else your dancer's technique will falter. And,
Mhm.
my argument is that if you don't ever take the time to do these things, then the technique's going to fall apart regardless.
Right,
And it actually will assist in developing the technique versus taking away from it. And
right.
um, something that I preach in my certification program is that instructors need to start laying out their class ahead of time. They can't just walk in and throw a class,
Mhm.
unless you're a very
Absolutely.
seasoned instructor. I mean, I'm sure you do it every now and then, but you have to think at least as a skeleton of what your class is going to consist of. Okay, the first 5 minutes we're going to do a little warm up. The middle part of my class, I'm going to do the meat of my technique, or maybe we just take, here's bar, and I take my center work and I'm going to focus solely on balance today. This is something
Mhm,
that my teacher, your former teacher, Brenda, she was doing the other day is she focused literally just on balance in the center, and we did so
mhm,
many different vestibular exercises and things mixed in with the technique. She'd give an
mhm.
exercise, then she'd give a combination, and it was like seamlessly transitioned through, and then we ended with cool down stretches, and that was it.
Yeah.
And my turns were the best that they've been in a long time
I bet.
because
Yeah,
you're
I bet.
priming your muscles and your
Well,
brain saying,
right.
"Hey, you've got you're gonna do this now."
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so it can
I
happen. I just think that people are stuck.
I agree. We tend to get stuck in that, you know, basic ballet class format, but I think this truly that integration is the key, as you're saying, making it relative, those exercises absolutely relative to what it is you're teaching, regardless of whether it's in the center or bar, really. But and doing it in the moment really, I think, helps to build those connections in students' minds.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do too. So
Mhm.
something that I want to kind of get your perspective on is, well, I want you to be honest because I have no hard feelings against this now, but I
Mhm.
want you to talk about how my body was and how I lacked strength, technique, and honestly, like I'm still getting to know my body today. Like I didn't know I
Mhm.
had hypermobile hips or hypermobile knees,
Mhm.
but it makes sense because the rest of my body is
Right.
hypermobile too.
Right.
How I was really lacking on those kinds of things. We stayed after class a lot. You gave me exercises, and kind of just some encouragement for any dancer who may be currently sitting in my shoes of where I used to be. Some
Mhm.
inspiration for younger dancers or even older dancers who want to, become better.
Right, right. Well, I think it's important to remember that our bodies are malleable, and they can be
Yep.
shaped, and you can
Hmm.
take a few steps backwards in order to, catapult yourself forward. And oftentimes, I think dancers are afraid to take those few steps backward. They're afraid to lower the leg to find the placement before the leg will go up again, or they're
Yep.
afraid not to do a triple pirouette when, they're falling out of it. They feel that doing three and falling out of it is better than doing one correctly placed and balanced, as you said. So there's a mind shift there that has to happen. And one thing that I remember very distinctly about you, Veronica, is that had this crazy willingness to apply corrections, and you had a really smart work ethic. You were willing to make the adjustments, take the time it took to really let your body absorb it, and make it your own. And then you have incredible persistence moving forward too. And it requires that. Listen, many people come to these kind of realizations about their technique as they come into college, and now they're in a room full of people that have come from all over the place, and they go, "Oh my gosh, maybe I'm not the best one in the room, and maybe I haven't been taught everything that I need to know." And so, having an open mind and understanding that it will happen, but that it's a process and it takes time. It's hard to unlearn what we've learned and to break those kinds of habits, and that's exactly what you did
Yep.
over the time when you were at Akron. You were very methodical about it, and you always asked. We did stay behind class a lot, but you asked for it, and I don't more teacher out there who's going to say no to a student who really wants to, learn and succeed. So, I would say don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to
Yes.
really put in the work. And if you find a
Yeah,
good
and
program,
yep.
you
And if your
know,
teacher is not willing to stay with you, then you should probably look for someone else, and, like,
yes.
if your teacher is not willing to put forth the effort and you have the desire,
Mhm,
you've gotta look for other resources because I am so thankful and grateful that I had you. I literally wouldn't
mhm,
be here today
mhm.
talking to everybody if, if you didn't take the time
Sweet.
with me, if you didn't help me. I don't think I'd
Mhm,
ever have gotten to that point because I
mhm,
had tried with other teachers and I got rejection because I think they
mhm,
saw, she's a waste of time. She's, looks
mhm.
like I think someone told me I look like I just got birthed by a horse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think that especially in today's world, and this is again one of those things that I just am delighted by the evolution of our dance world. In today's world, there's a place for everyone in dance. And
Yes.
no, it might not be as a prima ballerina in New York City Ballet because there are only so many of them, but there's a place for everyone. And continually striving and moving forward and believing in yourself will get you there. It just takes time. And as you said, if you're not getting the nurturing that you need and the mentoring that you need from your teacher, I would suggest look elsewhere as well because there are many, many dance professionals in this region for sure who are willing to help you do the work, who are willing and knowledgeable enough to help you make the right decisions too about your body. There's a lot of unfortunately incorrect information out there, and that's why I think what you're doing and the fact that you come from both a serious dance background and uh you know your understanding of anatomy and the way that the body works because of your degree and certifications, just it's the perfect melding of you know knowledge, I think, to be able to then pass on to dancers, because you understand both languages and you speak both languages and
Yeah.
you can show people how to integrate uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
good
Because
healthy
I think
practices into their career.
something that I even experienced as a dancer was I would go to therapy and they just didn't understand what was expected out of a dancer in some, it's hit or miss with who you end up as your, physical therapist. And if they
Hmm.
don't understand dance, it's hard for you to get on board and be like, yeah, I'm all about this right now. Cause if
Right.
there's a disconnect there. And
Sure.
that's why I wanted to go back and get another degree because I was like, I want to fill this disconnect. Like I
Hmm.
see a void, I want to fill it.
Right.
Um so yeah, I think that that's really important too. So in terms of instructors go, do you think that there's a need for more lifelong education for instructors? I never really thought about it until I became a physical therapist and personal
Hmm.
trainer. I never thought about those things because, I didn't have to take CEUs, and now I have to take CEUs to keep my certifications up. And
Sure.
I'm like, oh, I learned something like all the time. It's like,
Hmm.
eh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that for instructors participating in like a lifelong education program like my certification
Yeah.
course?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really imperative that teachers are up on the latest, for sure. But not even just informationally speaking, but like kinesthetically, I think teachers need to be able to take what they know about their bodies and apply it to other people's bodies. And let's be honest, we're all different, right? I mean, I never could have taught somebody in the way that I was taught. Um, Given my hips, like I had to really internalize what that meant for me as a dancer and then be able to instruct in a way that was different than how I would have instructed myself, because of my anatomy. And so I do think it's really crucial that dance teachers know um, anatomy and that they understand muscle structure and alignment and placement and all of those things and beyond what I'd say most of us have been given in our traditional ballet training. One of the things that I love about the University of Akron's program, and especially now that we have this phenomenal teacher who is teaching anatomy, is that she's truly teaching anatomy for dance. It's not
Yeah.
anatomy of sports science. It is
And
anatomy
that's
for
what we had to
dance.
take.
And
We
these
just took it in a lecture hall with
right.
random people.
Yeah, no, that is not how it's being done anymore. And so our students are really not only it's experiential learning in a way because they're going right from their ballet class into their anatomy class. They also make trips to the cadaver lab now to see the real thing, and to fully understand what it is that's happening inside that body. Sure, you're making a beautiful arabesque, but what exactly is happening with your, you know,
Yeah.
muscles and your bones and all of it. Um, and I think that we are graduating dancers who have a tremendous understanding now of that, not just for themselves, but as they go on to teach, they will carry that with them. But I believe fully that they should continue to study and continue to educate themselves. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been at this for a lot of years now, almost 40, and, I will say that I still seek out information all the time,
Oh, yeah.
constantly. Yeah, because you have to. It makes, your practice relative and helps you, um, stay current, which is super important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic that they're doing that more practical anatomy. That's what I did in my course as well. Cause I
Mhm.
okay, this is how it's going to relate directly to arabesque or,
Right,
whatever you're trying to achieve when
right.
you just simply read it out of a textbook. And the other thing is that the reason that I did this program is because it's more accessible to somebody internationally, but
Mm,
also not everybody can afford college, or maybe not everybody wants to go back to college. Maybe they're
mhm.
older and they want to learn and they want to learn in a
Sure.
very self-paced manner. Um, but that allows more open access and affordability than, going and getting a college degree. But that's so fantastic that that has changed at Akron
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
remember so many dancers who were my peers failing anatomy because they
Mm,
did not see a point in it whatsoever.
right.
And then that being the reason that they didn't pass freshman jury or that they weren't able to
Mm,
continue in the program because they would fail
mhm.
out of anatomy. And it
Right,
was in a huge lecture hall with a guy droning on and reading out of a textbook. And,
right.
unless you're a nerd like me, nobody really enjoys that.
Right.
That was one thing
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay, well, I can see the connection here." But that's a lot of, critical thinking as well.
Mm.
So, all right, let's wrap things up. I think that we had a great conversation here. This is
Yes.
fantastic. I'm
Good.
so glad that you shared all of these things with us today. And I guess my last question for you is, do you have any advice for me moving forward with how I'm implementing all my programs and, on my dance journey as a 30 something year old now dancer who still dances herself?
I would say continue to do what you're doing, Veronica, because you're doing fabulous work, and it's so important that people have access to you, which I know they do. And I wish that I would have had something like this as I was coming up as a young teacher and or student, to be able to just pop online. Of course, there wasn't online when I was your age, that their age, but let's be real. But it would have been incredible, and I would have soaked it up
Yeah.
because at that point in time, I had to go to the library to buy books about dance and borrow books about dance, and that was all I could do to stay up on the latest. So I think it's fantastic that you're at people's fingertips and keep on plugging away. That's all I can say. You do good
Thank you,
work.
Kara.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me for this interview today. And
Sure.
I hope that everybody has enjoyed our interview and got something useful out of the interview. Make sure that you comment below, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys on the platform. Bye.